Today on the podcast, I have a guest who I've hosted already this season, and you might be wondering why he is back. And he is back because I have questions for him. This is not a political podcast, but the issues that we are facing in our city, in my opinion, are not political issues, they're human issues. And so I'd like to welcome back to the podcast Kareem Allam. He is a founding partner of Richardson Strategy Group, political strategist, policy analyst, but I think most importantly, he is running for the mayor of the city of Vancouver. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on. One of my favorites.
Oh, thank you so much, Kareem. I appreciate that. Listen, you had your launch party yesterday, and I was watching on social media as you spoke to various points, some in which you spoke to with a lot of passion on wanting to change. Together We Can was really something that you really emphasized. I'm going to start you off on that, Together We Can, because you mentioned that as kind of a slogan for the Liberal Party that you're running under, the Vancouver Liberals. And Kareem, I'm wondering, Together We Can, we have so much division in this city and a lot of criticism around those who are struggling in the downtown east side. I've been very vocal about my feelings about those struggling in the downtown east side and our lack of humanity. I feel that a lot of us have developed. Together We Can, does that include those who are struggling on the downtown east side? Are they going to be involved in this?
Absolutely. And they already have been. And I've been really fortunate to have quite a number of leaders from the downtown east side. And then people who aren't leaders, who are peers in the neighborhood who have been advising my campaign and my policies. But for sure, it includes them. I generally feel that one of the biggest issues that's preventing Vancouver from moving forward is the level of divisiveness on everything from housing to policing to frontline services at our community centers. Everything's just become so toxic and so divided. And we're seeing political leadership, not just here in the city of Vancouver, but right across the country, that's going out there and fanning the flames of division to win an election. And I fundamentally reject that kind of politics. And if we're going to make any progress, specifically on the downtown east side, we actually need to have the courage to reach across the table and talk to people who you might not agree with and share those experiences. We have to depoliticize the conversation, enable free thought, free expression, and the best ideas to come to the forefront. We're not going to get there with just a clinical healthcare solution. We're not going to get there with a single piece of legislation on bail reform. We're not going to get there by hiring just 1,000 new CBSA officers to stop the precursors from getting into the country. We're going to get there by including all those things, but also the experience of community directly.
Mm-hmm. I really like this idea of depoliticizing, because the word politics to me, it doesn't ring genuine. It rings, not actually getting things done because of politics. It's and I know that's a term that that must be used in these types of elections and situations, but whenever you can depoliticize, I would love that, because I think politics often holds us back, as does division. I wanted to ask you about one other question about the downtown east side. I understand that so Sarah Blais, who runs ops down the downtown east side, huge figure, works incredibly hard, has saved countless lives. I understand that you've spent quite a bit of time with ops, getting to know what happens there, what they do. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I sat on the board for a little bit less than a year. I came off the board once I decided to get involved in politics. But I learned a lot. First of all, just let's talk about what ops does. It's one of the largest supervised consumption sites in North America. They see between 500 and 1,000 people a day. But attached to ops are a series of other programs. So people don't just go there to use drugs in a supervised environment with peers. We have a recovery navigators program, or I should say they have a recovery navigators program. So if people ideate for recovery, there is a person there to start connecting them up with detox and all the other services all the way through the recovery point, but also once they get released from recovery, helping them find homes and jobs to stabilize their lives. And it's an incredible program. Ops also runs AA programs and NA programs. Ops also operates food banks. And then when you do finally get into housing, sometimes the most basic things are missing. So beyond the food bank, you can go get your pledge and your laundry detergent and all these other things that get donated. Pet food is another big thing that happens there. But there's all these other sort of community events that get organized around the organization, and it really has been it's really become a real center point in the community, and the community there is just quite remarkable in terms of its resilience. One of the things that I spent time learning and understanding, one is just at an administrative level, how do they run? That's what you want to do on the board, is to make sure that we're spending money and employee resources efficiently. But then also the interaction that I had directly with people in the community, I learned a lot. There's just, a smart guy like me who reads a lot of books. There's just things you don't learn unless you talk to people directly. I didn't know that you don't feel good when you take fentanyl, for example. Heroin makes you feel good. Fentanyl doesn't. So this idea that you keep hearing on Twitter or whatever, that everyone's there just having a good time, that's not what's happening. Fentanyl is poison, and it's absolutely terrible. But I also learned a little bit about the different types of drug use and drug users there. People on fentanyl get stigmatized. When you see someone on fentanyl on the street, people on Twitter will often think that they might be a threat or a danger to them. Fentanyl puts you to sleep. Fentanyl does not make you go crazy. It's the methamphetamines with psychotic episodes that makes you go on stabbing sprees. And we haven't developed a really good strategy on meth. You can't recover from meth. Everyone needs to understand you cannot recover from methamphetamine. It effectively fries and atrophies your brain. So we need to have a more comprehensive solution around that, because that's the incident that happened in Yaletown not too long ago with a woman who went on a stabbing spree. That's what gets the attention, but it wrongfully stigmatizes those who might be on other drugs. So there's a lot of learning that goes in there. But the last thing I'll say is, I do have a bit of a policy mind, and I'm going to approach this with a clinical, just in clinical jargon. So I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but I learned that there's three parts to drug users' life. There's the before, there's the during, and if we do things right, hopefully there's an after. In terms of the during, that number will never be zero. There will always be drug users. There always have been in the history of humankind. But let's talk about the before part. And so I would ask myself the question, where are people coming from where they end up in the downtown east side? 40%, approximately 40% of the community's indigenous. 5 to 10% are actually veterans, Afghan war veterans, a lot of construction industry folks. MCFD, when you're 18 years old and you're no longer a ward of a state, so if your parents were orphaned and you end up being taken over by MCFD, you're basically given $50 and a bus ticket. At 18 years old, I would have zero ability to take care of myself. Another growing number of people that are ending up in the downtown east side are women. Many who are educated, have a university degree, that might have moved out here from Nova Scotia, for example, and are fleeing in the middle of the night from a boyfriend who was abusive to them, and heading over to a battered women's shelter. We're also seeing record numbers of seniors who have no mental health or addiction problems as well. And so the community has been very welcoming of a diverse, broad range of people, and is dealing with a broad, diverse range of issues. So the number one thing I learned about the downtown east side is this: we aren't dealing with a population, we're dealing with individuals, and each individual has unique needs and circumstances. And this plug-in-play approach that our politicians are taking, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. The last thing I'll just say before I cut off is that even when we talk about supportive housing, especially when we take that supportive housing outside of the neighborhood, what ends up happening is, for example, this one person might have, there's about 45 services that different kinds of services that get delivered in the downtown east side. One person might need 7, another person might need 8, another person might need 6, and none of them overlap. And then they get moved to supportive housing outside of the neighborhood. And then what ends up happening is you can't actually bring all those wraparound services around you into those communities because everyone's got so many different needs. So we're getting really bad outcomes because, if you put something, let's say, together on the west side, or you put it together somewhere in the southeast of the city, well, there are no food bank services there. So you're going to have people that are going to be hungry. So we need to start thinking about individuals, and we need to stop trying to solve this as a population or as those people. That's not going to happen if we continue to shout each other down. There's a lot of learning that needs to happen, not just only from people outside the community, but people inside the community to understand the limitations of the system and where the low-hanging opportunities might actually be.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic what you say about looking at those who are struggling or who are having challenges with mental health and substance dependency in the downtown east side as individuals versus those people and populations. In a recent conversation with advocate and speaker Guy Felicello, that was something that we discussed. And I said, isn't there some way, and this is exactly what you bring up, every individual has a different need. When I was using drugs, and most listeners know that I became dependent on opioids due to a back injury before I had my family. By the grace of God, I have recovered and I'm doing well. But I can tell you, as to what you say, that when you're inside the drug use time, you're not having fun anymore. You're not getting high anymore. There's no euphoric feeling. This is about staying well. This is about stopping the withdrawal, the sweats, the sicknesses, the psychological terror that comes with withdrawal. So I think that really when people see, like you say, those on the downtown side, that they are not having a good time. They are trying to stay in a state that keeps them from feeling like a death and a flu that no one can imagine. Withdrawal is just such a terrible feeling. So really connecting with individuals, that point is really well taken. As is the Indigenous population, which is so overrepresented in that community and must be addressed individually with cultural care.
Yeah, it does. And if I could just jump in on that, one of the things that we've done as a country is we've aggregated services. So if you're a sick mom in Terrace or in Fort St. John, there's only one women's hospital. You got to come all the way down to Vancouver. If you're a sick child in Prince Rupert, you got to come all the way down to Children's Hospital here again in Vancouver. But we've also done the same thing around all these services. So all the expertise, all the knowledge in the neighborhood is there. But the real big issue that we've really got to confront as a country, and I'm not going to solve this as the mayor, but this is the challenge that I want to put out there to your listeners. As a country, we've built all our services and social services an inch from the ground. We're not building services up here where people might need them. So if there's a senior that's $150 a month short for rent, let's help them with that $150 a month to finish their rent. They get to stay at home. It's efficient economically. You get better outcomes. But if we don't give them that $150 a month, guess what happens? They fall all the way down to an inch from the ground, and it costs us about $70,000 a year per person to deal with it. So we don't actually necessarily always need more money for the system. We just have to reimagine what the system's going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Who do you see at those tables? And you don't need to name names, but just the types of people, Kareem, because I find even with the involuntary care and treatment announcement that the Premier made recently, I see the direction he's going in that, he's seeing or, getting countless complaints and, look what I'm seeing on the street. Look what my children are seeing as they're walking through the community. So that part, I understand. A lot of things I don't, but we're not here to talk about involuntary treatment. But one thing I did want to bring up around that was that I feel as though the solutions are only really sometimes to placate those who are complaining versus actually solving the problem. Because the people that are at the table coming up with the solutions really don't understand the issues. and we're missing key people at the table. Do you plan on diversifying that table?
I'll do everything I can, and that's really what I think what my campaign promise has been about, is pulling people together, because there's a lot of different drivers that get the premier to make a decision to do one thing or to have someone do another. But genuinely, there is a lot of gaps of knowledge, and we keep and I'm to blame for this too, to a large extent, and I'll take my lumps for it too. I sat on the Fraser Health Authority board. I was in Fraser Health as a staffer before I joined the board. So I have a very clinical way of looking at healthcare administration. And again, you're conditioned in government, you're conditioned in the healthcare system to think about populations. And we've developed a very, very good healthcare system for the most part, at dealing with people who have common illnesses. We generally have pretty good outcomes on heart and cancer in this country, but you get a rare blood disorder, the whole system falls apart. And so now we're dealing with a toxic drug crisis where intuitively everyone's been trying to deal with it. Everyone's been trying to deal with it sort of as a population, but the reality is until we start getting down to that individual level, we're not going to make progress. Now, there are some things in the system that can change. On your way out of being a drug user into recovery, there are two choke points. The first choke point is detox. Up until recently, and this might have just recently changed, you could only go to detox 6 times a year in the province of British Columbia. And it would typically take you weeks to get into detox. Once you ideate for recovery, all the literature says you've got 48 hours to get that person into detox. So we have a choke point here where we can't get enough people through detox. So there's a system issue here that we can address. And I think part of that solution might be to allow more peers into to help with detox. Sometimes you can detox with just your mom and dad at your side or your friend watching over you. But the second one is housing. Okay, great. We've got everyone through the whole system. They're recovered. They can't find a house and they're back on the street again. So if we don't solve these two things as a system, it's going to be really hard to make any measurable kind of progress on this issue. And so I'm being really, very, very blunt and academic about my approach. But even once we solve these two issues, we're still back at the original problem of the system, which it doesn't look at individuals very well.
Yeah.
And that's not, and again, that's not meant to be a criticism of Costa Health or any of the service providers. And the bulk of the service providers and the bulk of the frontline staff at Costa Health understand this intrinsically well. It's just, can they free up the dollars to deliver that one-on-one care that you might need sometimes?
Yeah, no, it's a systematic failure. It took one person to save me, one person to sit with me and realize it's PTSD. It changed everything, right? That changed everything for me. So, and that took someone understanding me as an individual. Transitioning a little bit to something that you build off of housing, bringing young people back to Vancouver. I assumed, and I wasn't at the launch yesterday, unfortunately. I wish I could have been there, but that's obviously a key issue. We're living in a city where very few can afford housing if it's available. And, is this a city that young people want to really build families? Can they afford family housing, let alone housing for them as an individual or as a couple? I'm wondering what some of your thoughts are on bringing young people back to Vancouver. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Start off with just where my feelings are on this issue. There's a great Canadian social contract, and that's this. The people of my generation are supposed to create the winning conditions for younger people, and then they're supposed to succeed. And when they become my age and I become a senior, they pay for the social programs that I'm going to need. So our generations are linked. The politicians that are going out there trying to pit one generation against another are not doing us any favors. This generation of young people coming up will be the first generation that will be worse off than their parents. But it's manifesting itself in another way. Vancouver is one of the oldest cities in North America. And I think I said that on your program last time. And there's two things young people are telling me that are holding them back from planting roots here in the city of Vancouver. The first is housing and the second is jobs. Let's talk about housing first. We've made housing construction in the city way too complicated. We are the only city in the province that has its own building code, the Vancouver Building Code. On day one, if I'm elected, the Vancouver Liberals will get rid of the Vancouver Building Code and replace it with the BC Building Code, which is used everywhere else. Those 80-story towers being built in Burnaby, those 80-story towers being built in Surrey are built with the BC Building Code. The BC Building Code works just fine. We're going to get rid of that complexity. The second thing is, it wasn't that long ago, Rachel, about 15, 20 years ago, where all the approvals for housing, whether it was single-family homes, multi-family homes, high-rise, was approved in one department. Today at the City of Vancouver, whether you're a private sector builder, a not-for-profit builder, or a government builder, there are 12 departments that have a veto on your project. We've got to simplify it and streamline it. This is adding cost, this is adding delays, and it makes no sense why we've gone to this system where everything used to be approved into one department and given that responsibility to so many. So that's what I'm going to do on housing. On jobs, there's a few things. Number one, we have the largest per capita number of artists in the country. This is our competitive advantage over every other place in the country. This is critical for our tourism sector, but it's also critical for our digital economy going forward, and especially our creative economy, particularly as film has always been an important part of the Vancouver's industry. So we will, as Vancouver Liberals, once elected, we're going to create an artist land reserve. We'll be the first jurisdiction in North America to protect and preserve lands for artists to thrive. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start rolling back all those industrial age policies that frame how small businesses can operate. Small businesses are the largest employers of young people here in the city of Vancouver. And what do I mean by industrial age policies? Well, in Vancouver, it's against the law to manufacture candles and sell them in the same retail store. Our legislative framework here in Vancouver says you have to be in industrial zones. So, for example, the Broom Co. at Granville Island that we all love, you can't do that anywhere else in Vancouver. You can only do it there because it's on federal land. So we should be able to encourage young people who are reclaiming some of these craft cottage industries to be able to create again. The last thing that I want to talk to you about is my number one transportation priority, which will also supercharge Vancouver's economy, and that's getting the SkyTrain line finally all the way out to UBC. UBC is the largest research center in Western Canada, downtown Vancouver's largest job center. Think of the synergies that will happen if we can connect the two together. I also think that we should also get the SkyTrain line out there because UBC is the second largest commuter destination. But the third thing is, I'm not that optimistic that having the terminus of the SkyTrain at Arbutus is going to really, really do very much to alleviate traffic. So it's time to take that visionary step. But once that SkyTrain line gets approved, the next thing I want to do is I want UBC and Vancouver to amalgamate. That will likely take public input. That will likely involve some kind of a referendum. But it's a debate and a discussion worth having. UBC doesn't even have simple things like noise bylaws and any way to enforce them. They also don't have the capacity to build the sewer and the water to densify along that SkyTrain line if it ever does get built. So I think that there's some really good opportunities there to have that discussion about starting to simplify our governments rather than constantly creating new entities to govern us.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have a big job ahead of you, but you seem very enthusiastic about it. I just want to finish off here, Kareem, by asking you a final question, and that is that should you be elected mayor approximately a year from now in the fall, will you be accessible? Because I think that, and how does integrity play into that? Integrity Commission, there's been, some calls. There has been a call from our current mayor to around the Integrity Commission and perhaps not having an Integrity Commission or not reporting to them. And I feel, when someone becomes mayor, are you the same, Kareem Allam? And will you be accessible? And how does integrity play into that?
I will be accessible, especially to the media. It's hard, we often forget that Vancouver's actually 12 provincial ridings and 9 federal ones. So I might not be as accessible just by sheer volume as some of the other electeds. But I've always returned every reporter's call within an hour, and I've got a reputation for that around the city, and I intend to continue to do that. I intend to be accessible to the community in every way possible. In terms of the integrity issues, Ken Sim tried to get rid of the Integrity Commissioner while he was under investigation from the Integrity Commissioner. I want a review of the Integrity Commissioner's office to strengthen its office, to broaden its powers. This is one of the key mechanisms for transparency, making sure our politicians are doing the right thing. But I also want to bring in a lobbyist registry. The days where lobbyists, well-connected lobbyists, have better access to our politicians in my Vancouver are done on day one. The province has already said no, they don't want to take over Vancouver's lobbyist registry. I will start my own. I also want to enhance accessibility to all the documents the city has. The city's deleted its org chart, so we don't know what it looks like anymore. So the public doesn't have any idea of who is responsible for the decisions for getting a permit approved or whatever it is that they're requesting or looking for. So I'm a big Democrat. I want to enhance the institutions of democracy. And I think we've seen a big rollback of this in the last 10 years, frankly. And I wouldn't throw this all at necessarily at Ken Sim's hands. But yes, we need to enhance transparency. We need to enhance the checks and balances on our politicians as well, too. And if we do that, then only good decisions get approved.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much. Today is the day after Kareem's launch. He is extremely busy with, I imagine, countless media calls. Thank you for taking the time to discuss with me and to share with my audience. It's much appreciated. Since the moment we connected, you've been kind, transparent, and honest about all the issues, especially the ones in which I care about. We seemed very aligned on. So I'm sure that we will chat again. Make sure to get lots of rest, water, and exercise during this time. Take care of yourself. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Kareem. It's Kareem Allam. He is running for the mayor of Vancouver, political strategist, policy analyst, co-founder of Richardson Strategy Group. Thank you so much, Kareem. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the work and the advocacy that you do.
Thank you.